The new maid almost didn't take the job. She had heard things about the farm, about the family, about the man who ran it. But it was March of 1922. Work was scarce, and the Gruber farmstead in rural Bavaria was paying well enough. So Maria Baumgartner packed her things, said goodbye to her family in the village, and walked out to Hinterkaifeck. She had been on the farm for less than 6 hours when she was killed. But here is the thing that nobody could explain. The thing that kept the investigators awake at night. The killer didn't leave after that. To understand what happened, we need to go back several weeks. Hinterkaifeck was not easy to find. The farmstead sat deep in the Bavarian countryside, about 40 miles north of Munich, at the end of a long dirt track that most people in the nearby village of Weidhofen had no reason to travel. 6 people lived there, 3 generations under one roof. Andreas Gruber was 63 years old. He ran the farm with his wife Kazilia, who was 72. Their widowed daughter Victoria lived with them, along with her 2 children, 7-year-old Kazilia, named for her grandmother, and 2-year-old Joseph. The new maid, Maria, made 6. Andreas was not a well-liked man. The village had rumors about him, dark ones. He was cold, controlling, prone to cruelty. He had been prosecuted for incest years earlier. He had served time. He had come back, and the farm went on. But in the weeks before March 1922, Andreas began to notice things. A newspaper lying in the snow near the house. It was not their newspaper. No one in the family had brought it. He found footprints. They came from the direction of the forest. They led up to the farmhouse. They did not lead back out. Andreas told his neighbors about this. He said that for several nights he had heard something in the attic. Footsteps moving above the ceiling where no one slept. He went up and checked. Nothing there. The previous maid had quit without explanation the autumn before. She told people in the village she could not stay in that house. She did not say why. On the evening of Friday, March 31st, 1922, Andreas went out to the barn to do the last of the day's work. He did not come back inside. The village of Weidhofen noticed nothing at first. Days passed. The post went uncollected. The children did not appear at school on Monday. A neighbor who had been expecting Andreas for a repair waited and kept waiting. By Tuesday, April 4th, a group of neighbors walked out to Hinterkaifeck to check. The animals were still alive. Someone had fed them recently. Smoke had been seen rising from the chimney earlier that week. The mail was stacked neatly by the door. They went inside. They found Victoria and her daughter Kazilia first, in the barn beneath a pile of hay. Then Andreas. Then his wife, inside the house. Then 2-year-old Joseph in his crib upstairs. And finally Maria Baumgartner, in her room. She had been there less than a day. All 6 had been killed with a mattock, a farm tool already on the property. The weapon was never found. The police arrived and began to reconstruct what had happened. The family had been lured to the barn one by one, beginning with Andreas, then killed. The mattock swung again and again in the dark, then carried into the house for those who remained. Forensic examination placed the murders on Friday night. Neighbors had seen smoke from the chimney on Saturday. On Sunday, on Monday, someone had lit the fires. Someone had fed the livestock. Food had been taken from the kitchen, cooked and eaten. A neighbor reported seeing a figure near the farm over the weekend. The police came to understand that after killing 6 people, the perpetrator had stayed. For days. Living inside the house, sleeping there, keeping the animals fed, the fires burning, as though nothing had happened. Whoever it was had sat in Andreas Gruber's chair and waited. They had suspects. A local man named Lorenz Schlittenbauer had been Victoria's former lover. He was rumored to be the father of little Joseph. When the neighbors walked out to the farm that Tuesday, Schlittenbauer was among them. He led the group through the house, with an ease that unsettled the others. He moved some of the bodies. He had an explanation for all of it. There were theories about a drifter, a grudge, a land dispute, a war veteran suffering what we would now call severe psychological trauma. There were darker theories too, ones that turned inward toward the farm itself, toward the secrets that a man like Andreas Gruber might have kept. The police were confident they would solve it quickly. They were wrong. A full year later, the investigation had produced nothing certain. Evidence was mishandled. Witnesses gave contradictory accounts. The case passed between authorities and went cold. The heads of the victims were removed and sent to a Munich university for forensic analysis, a practice still being attempted in 1922. They were never returned. Young Kazilia was 7 years old. She was found in the barn beneath the hay, with clumps of her hair torn out. She had not died immediately. She had been alive in the dark, in the barn, for some time after the others. What she heard in those hours, what she may have understood, no one will ever know. The farm at Hinterkaifeck was demolished in 1923. The surrounding villages tore it apart for parts and building materials. Within a few years, there was almost nothing left. A small memorial now stands in its place, at the edge of the tree line. The killer was never identified. Every few years, journalists or investigators return to the case. Schlittenbauer remains the most common suspect. No one has ever crossed into certainty. The footprints in the snow had come from the forest and not gone back. Andreas told his neighbors this weeks before it happened. He said it like a man reporting a minor inconvenience, like something that would resolve itself. Someone had been living near that family, or in that house, or in the attic, above the ceiling, where footsteps moved at night. For how long, no one knows. After it was done, they sat beside the fire, warm, quiet, listening to the silence they had made. They fed the animals, they cooked the food, they stayed for days. And when they finally left, they walked back into the world, into a life somewhere, into ordinary days. And the snow closed over their tracks.